First Friday. I love this show that I'm so fortunate to be hosting this evening. It's called Where We Belong, and it's focusing on figures in different environments. And we have 5 really Oregon treasures that we're highlighting with it. You know, there's a lot of artists I know that work with this theme, but these are some of my favorites. First, of course, George Johanson. We have from Portland, and he was a beloved educator, painter, and printmaker, and this is the first time we've had a chance to show his work since his passing in 2022. And his son is here from Portland, who's also an artist and who's going to give remarks here in a minute. Also, my mother, Margaret Coe, is here somewhere in the back of the chair, and she has a brand new painting. It's the largest in the show. It's called My Walden. And so she's here and she can answer questions later. She also has a series of not old paintings, but not as recent as this one, that are kind of facing out on the window. We have some 1930s lithographs by the late David McCosh, who was actually, I always like to joke that I owe my life to David McCosh because my parents met in his painting class in the early 60s. And a lot of people know his later style, but this is the work that he did when he still lived in Chicago in the 30s. Very typical of that era, very good. Of course, my late father, Mark Clarke. We have some beautiful acrylics, you know, with these kind of lone figures on the coast that actually he did that a lot in his painting. And then finally, Erik Sandgren, who's not here tonight, but we have some of his small egg temperas and larger acrylics, and he's, you know, known as a vigorous plein air artist, and we're happy to have his work too. So anyway, Aaron was kind enough to both bring his dad's work down here and agree for me to show it, and also give some remarks because we haven't really had you at the gallery before, so I thought, I want to hear from you, and I said you can say whatever you want. So let's welcome Aaron Johanson.
Thank you. Well, I'd first like to say thank you very much to the Clarke Gallery for hosting this wonderful exhibit. And I know my father's here in spirit. He would be very pleased to know who he's showing with. And I'm sure he's met your parents and perhaps some of the other artists too. I had been over to Erik's for dinner with my father, so I know that they knew each other because my father and Nelson Sandgren were kind of the same age and colleagues. Nelson was a few years older, but my father was socially very outgoing and very supportive of the local arts community. So he knew other artists, and it wasn't to keep an eye on what was going on so he could kind of, you know, edge ahead of them or anything. He did a lot to promote other artists and was always there at their exhibits or their memorial services, and felt that art was not it was not a competition. It was really a collaboration, even between different artists. So if someone won the governor's award, he was there congratulating them. And I, as his son, witnessed the real sincerity of that. So my father was really grounded in the Portland art scene, but he was also grounded as a Northwest artist. His work is very often based in Portland, and even though it has a highly abstracted nature to it, and this could be virtually anywhere, this in particular was based on photographs that he would take. In those days it was film, so he would take his 35mm film camera and make some snapshots, and they were really lousy quality. He was not a great photographer, but the point was he would use them for inspiration about color patterns, about imagery, and he would take those ideas as the genesis for the paintings. So the Night Games #2 is part of a series of works he did at the waterfront. And the games there, the whole Rose Festival provided a lot of subject matter for him. And then this bus stop #2, it's also could be from anywhere in Portland, or maybe it's from several different places, and he would kind of splice them together. He was very interested in the human figure, so that's why you see so much of his work involving figures. These two are rather similar to one another, both based in downtown, and then the work on the adjacent wall here is from a series called Waiting for the Parade. And for years he would go to the Rose Festival parades and observe with his sketchbook or with his camera, getting material for those paintings. He would often place himself in paintings, such as you see over here. This is a self-portrait, or at least he's in it. And then in Portland you can see, or in the background you can see Portland at night, during the day. It's kind of like a triptych of different times. So my father was very interested in the movement of time through his work, and also into sign language. So if you see a hand coming from the side, it would often be a letter J or something that you don't really need to know to make the painting more meaningful, but in his mind, it was part of an internal message for the way the painting worked. He was a great student of art throughout his life. We have hundreds and hundreds of art books of all the great masters and many of the contemporary artists, and he would observe their techniques and many of the images, especially the ones that many of us are familiar with over the centuries, the iconic images, and kind of morph those into his own works. So the other interesting thing about my father was he was an absolute workaholic, but it was because he was quintessentially an artist. I mean, he lived and breathed art. So while I was growing up in this artistic household, which I just thought was normal, everything he touched kind of it became embellished as art. We have a wooden mosaic that he had cut and put all around the front door. If my mother would stain her shirt, he would take the shirt and then paint little birds on it so she wouldn't have to throw it out. This just goes on and on. And despite how much he worked, he would always find time for me. So as a child, I'd come running in the studio with some immediate need, and he'd just gracefully put down his paints and deal with it. And so he was very present as a father, very loving and supportive. And I had the good fortune for the last, about 15 years to go to weekly life drawing sessions with him at Judy Weiss's studio in Portland. She was a former student and artist in her own right, and she, along with about 20 other artists, would get together, we'd pool our money and hire a life model every Friday for a couple hours. And so this is the kind of thing where you, out of mutual respect, you don't look over the shoulder of the artist next to you. It's just working away. Sometimes people leave their drawings out, you could observe them. But one time, when my daughter was about 7, I had the wonderful experience of having all 3 generations their life drawing. So my father and I are sketching away, and you can hear my daughter is having and I was just dying of curiosity what kind of drawing she would do. Is this child prodigy, perhaps? And when I looked over her shoulder, there was a beautiful stick figure. And this is how she had interpreted a life model, which is perfect. And although my father taught for 25 years, as I was just talking with Sylvia about this, he would not instruct you in the way of saying this is wrong. He would often say you might consider doing something different, but he wouldn't try to impose his own style on yours. So, the students that became friends or colleagues, I noticed that they have their own styles, and yet they managed to learn a lot from him. He was born in Seattle, moved to Portland at the age of 19 to enroll in Museum Art School and studied there for 3 years before going off to New York. He didn't bother graduating because in those days the certificate had no meaning. None of the graduates then ever expected to get a job in art. It was hopeless to think or fantastical to think that you could support yourself through art as a living. So he went to New York as his finishing school, spent 3 years there, rubbing shoulders with many of the great artists. Not that he was so great, but in those days and in the 50s, it was much more accessible. They would meet at the Cedar Bar over beers and discuss roundism or other isms that were emerging at the time. He experimented with abstract expressionism for a while. But even through that, when I'm looking back at his older works, I still see the figuration in the abstract expressionism. And from about the late 60s on, it turned back into full figurative work. So he taught for 25 years at the Museum Art School, retired in 1980, and then continued working feverishly up until just a few weeks before he died at 93.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't want to make it too long, but yeah, thank you for coming.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also say that in the office we have some of George's unframed prints. If anyone would like to see, just pop in there. They're in sleeves and they're wonderful and they're available also. So thank you so much,
Okay.
Erin.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.